Everybody.
Good morning.
Thank you for coming in for the April meeting of the Port Industrial Commission. Appreciate everybody coming out on a somewhat rainy day. Special welcome to Vice Mayor Simmons. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you, sir.
All right, we'll go ahead and get to business here. Mr. Moore, if you'll call the roll.
Yes, sir. Mr. Barron.
Here.
Mr. Bento.
Here.
Mr. McGuire.
Here.
Mr. Peterman.
Here.
Mr. Reineberg. Mr. Toops.
Here.
And Mr. Wallace. You have a quorum.
Okay, very well. Thank you. Mr. Reineberg and Mr. Wallace are both traveling on business, so unfortunately they won't be here with us this morning. Okay, our last meeting was March 27th. The minutes of that meeting have been distributed. I trust everybody's had the opportunity to look them over. Any discussion on the minutes? Any corrections that need to be made? If not, then I'll entertain a motion to have the minutes accepted as they've been presented.
So moved.
Bento and Mr. McGuire. Okay, thank you.
All right, and we have to vote Mr. Barron,
Yes.
Mr. Bento,
Yes.
Mr. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Peterman,
Yes.
and Mr. Toops.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you. All right, financials from this past month. If you move this backward.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
As at the 31st of March, 2018, total net position was $1,504,074. Total revenues for March was $86. That was generated from investment income. There were no expenses for March. The ending cash and temporary investment balance was $1,050.76. That's the end of the financial reports for March.
All right. The investment income, is that from the PER properties or is that our bonds?
That's from the town bank's account.
Oh, okay.
That interest that is
That's all
accrued
right.
or earned every month.
Right. So not too much there.
Right.
Any questions on the financials? If not, then once again, I'll entertain a motion to have them accepted as they've been submitted. Mr. Bento and Mr. Toops?
So.
Okay, very well.
All right, Mr. Barron,
Yes.
Mr. Bento,
Yes.
Mr. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Peterman,
Yes.
and Mr. Toops.
Yes.
All right, motion carries.
Okay, very well, thank you. All right, moving on to our proposed budget for the upcoming year. We had discussion on the budget last month. There were a couple of corrections to be made or suggestions on corrections. Has everybody looked this over, and is there any question on that? Well, why don't you just explain what was taken out, or
Yep. What we took out was I believe it was $35,000 that was allocated for the wetlands delineation study.
right?
And we after discussion, concluded that would not be necessary this year, and therefore did not ask for it in the budget. The budget is the same as last year, with the exception of that.
Okay, very well. Any questions on the proposed
What is the
budget?
wetlands, where is the wetland study for?
Well, what it was we had to spend this money for the wetlands delineation this past year.
Last year, but we
That's-
don't have it going forward.
Yeah, that's been done already.
Okay.
It's for the
Was that for PER?
The Vane Brothers.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So that's already been done. So we
Okay.
didn't need
That was a
in.
one-time thing.
Yeah, it was
Gotcha.
a one-time thing. Right.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Then we are prepared to vote on this, I presume.
When did you want to talk about going forward with the?
We're going to do that in closed session. And, yeah,
Gotcha.
we'll get into that.
Okay. Gotcha.
Okay.
Vote
Ready to vote on?
whenever you are.
Okay, so we don't need a motion to adopt the budget. We just need to vote on it. Is that correct?
Do you need a motion, or do we need to?
That's fine. I think you can go ahead. It's been submitted by the committee, so you can go ahead and vote on it.
Okay.
It's a roll call vote.
Roll call.
All right, Mr. Barron,
Yes.
Mr. Bento,
Yes.
Mr. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Peterman,
Yes.
and Mr. Toops.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, very well. We have a budget for the next year.
Yep.
Okay, old business, Mr. Moore, I'll turn this over to you on the Economic Development website.
Certainly. Thank you, Chairman and members of the commission. Just wanted to speak briefly this morning. We do have a new economic development website. It is accessportsmouthva.com. We are very excited about this website. It gives us some new branding and some new opportunities. Everything that we talk about in Portsmouth now is all about the access that you are provided by being in Portsmouth, which is literally the center of the East Coast and the center of Hampton Roads. Not to steal from the mayor, but he likes to say it's the gateway to the heartland of America. So we certainly look at this as being another tool in our toolbox to showcase not only the city of Portsmouth, but also what the Economic Development Office can do. With that, I'll speak a little bit more, if I could, Chairman. For those who are not at the State of the City, there is a thumb drive before you that has, of course, the website listed, but there's also on there and also in front of you in paper copy the annual report from last year. I really don't like to say an annual report because it really is an economic development update that we will have and prepare every year to talk about the successes that we have had as a city and as a department going forward. Again, this is something we are very proud of. We haven't produced one of these in a little while, but certainly going forward, we will make this an annual event. This should have been, and we are checking on this to make sure, but this should have been also been Inside Business this past Monday to showcase to everyone else throughout the region what we've done as a city. So.
Very nice. Okay. Well, I hope everybody will make use of that. Any questions, comments? Okay, good, thank you, appreciate it. All right, we'll move on to new business. We're running right through things here. One matter of housekeeping is to appoint a secretary, and Mr. Moore and I discussed, of course, Mr. Moore has been serving as our assistant secretary. He needs to actually be appointed as the secretary of the commission, so I'm going to make a suggestion that we just vote to have him appointed. I don't think we need any kind of a motion on that, is that right? So if everybody is in agreement...
Is he in agreement?
He's the one that asked me.
Well, certainly, as director, that is in the bylaws, that is the position of the director is to be the executive secretary to the EDA and the PPIC. So we need to make that official. It's just a matter of housekeeping we've just never done. So.
I want to make sure your
Yes,
head
sir.
was nodding in the affirmative direction.
I certainly accept
And the difference between the assistant and the secretary is you're doing the same
I'm
thing.
doing
So
the
yes.
exact same thing. I'm the backup of the backup.
Yes.
You're not getting any new business cards.
No,
Yeah.
no.
And no increase in pay.
No increase. So we could leave it the same. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. So,
Okay, fine. I don't know if we need to do a roll call vote on that. Is that necessary, or?
Yes, I do a roll call on that.
Okay.
all right. Well, Mr. Bear,
Yes.
Mr. Bento,
Yes.
Mr. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Peterman,
Yes.
and Mr. Toops.
Yes.
All right. So I am now officially the
Congratulations.
secretary. Thank you. Long time coming.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You've earned it.
Thank you.
Okay, next matter of business that we need to get into, again, is sort of housekeeping. Our annual meeting comes up in June. In June, we have to appoint new officers for the chairman, vice chairman, secretary, treasurer. So what we need to do is to nominate an ad hoc committee here that will come up with a slate of new officers. And I'll take suggestions from you guys as to who would like to be on that committee. I think it's just two guys.
I helped last year. I'm happy to
Okay,
do it
well,
again.
Jim, why don't you do it? And how about Ron? Would you want to do it since you're the newest fella here? Get you involved in things. So, all right, great. So if you two guys would get together between now and I guess next month, come up with a slate of officers, and then we will vote on that at the annual meeting in June, and I'll see how we do from there. I think just as a matter of reference for everybody's information, I think my term as the chairman will end in June, so I'm no longer it. You got to find somebody else.
Not for life?
Not for life. I don't think so. So I think that's the way it goes. So anyway, we'll look forward to hearing back from you guys in the next month or so. All right, let's move on then to Mr. Jim Toops and the white paper. I appreciate you doing all this work on that. And if you want to just tell us a little bit about what you think and what's going on with it.
Well, to start kind of at 10,000 feet, and the thought process is that Portsmouth has some of the best port facilities around, and Craney Island is coming. It's approved, it's going to happen. The timing could be uncertain, but it's coming. And a lot of the benefits of the port, just because of where property is, are going to Suffolk, Chesapeake, other places. And so my thought process is simply working within the parameters of the city. This is not us going on a Hail Mary by ourselves. But if you look at the powers of this authority, of this group, the commission, we have a lot of authority to do things. And what I think is that we need to work to try and make sure that there is property available for potential new businesses, so that Portsmouth has alternatives. And this is working hand in hand with the other agencies that do it. But what we can do is potentially be an ally in terms of, with a long-term plan. And to me, this is like a 10-year plan, because Craney Island isn't going to happen tomorrow. But as these things happen, that we've created potential properties that businesses can look at in this city. And what we can do, and the thought is that we target, and we've got a couple of properties already, but in a way it's kind of land banking, and the presentation last month fit right in with it. And so all you see is me going through, and the base premise is we want to create jobs and activity in the city, and not have people drive through our city to get to Suffolk or to Chesapeake or that to go to their jobs. And I tuned it some based upon last month. I'm not sure that that's what was presented here, because I did do an update. But what that did is simply said that some of the facilities should be smaller. But all I'm doing is I'm asking for us to say, yes, this is something that makes sense. And then it's going to be working with Mr. Moore. It's not us on our own, but it's us as a tool in the toolkit to potentially, I think we should find land. You come off Craney Island, you get to 164. But it's a 10-year plan. It's not we're going to do it tomorrow. But I think that we can use the powers of this committee and what the city has given us to be a good tool for that, so that as these things occur, Mr. Moore has lots of things in his tool chest to potentially have. And you saw shovel ready, you saw tier 4, and in my update I kind of referenced that. But what I would like us to do is to kind of put a stake in the ground saying that, yes, we want to be active and we want to start working on it. This is not we're buying anything today. All we're doing is saying, yes, that this makes sense, and there's no pride of authorship. It was just listening and looking. I think we're well positioned in terms of what's going to go on in our city, if we can then say, how do we make sure that some of those apples falling off the tree we capture, versus watching them drive to the next city over. And a rising tide will lift all boats, but we want some of that to be in Portsmouth. And so it's not saying it's office. It's not saying, to me, the success of the old Gwaltney, Smithfield, whatever, right around the corner from me, was we need more potential like that, where they're current and they've got infrastructure, and we see people will take those. And if we give people an apples and apples comparison where we're 5 minutes away from the port, or they can drive 25, 30 minutes out, and the other things are equal, we're going to get business. And we've got to create business in our city. That's how everything works. So, sorry, that's me rambling, but essentially,
No, it's very good. I mean,
that's my thought. And I listed out some areas, but essentially, to me, it's working with Mr. Moore, it's working with economic development, but it is that we have a long-term plan to where we say we want to create, if Craney Island's going to happen, how do we have something close to Craney Island to where Mr. Moore can present 5-10 sites? And, we may buy them, we turn them, hopefully we make a little bit of money doing it, but we're not out to make lots of money. We're out to create opportunities, shots on goal.
right, okay.
Okay, can I just, I guess one of the things when I read your white paper and a precursor paper, and then after seeing last week's brief, I guess where I sit is, Craney Island's right down the road for me, and I've had surveyors and archaeological surveyors and people checking density of land. So there's a lot of work that's already been done, by somebody. I mean, I'm not sure if Mr. Moore did it or somebody else did it, but maybe you did it. I don't know. But it'd be really good to know what already has happened and what's the plan, because you talk about this plan, but I'm not sure I fully understand what the plan is, and where the access is going to be, if we're going to run train tracks out there. So it's really, you almost need to know the plan so you can strategically position yourself to make these acquisitions or to zone them to make sure that that land is strong enough to support whatever you want to do, or if it's going to be parking lots, and then there's that fuel depot at the end of the road there that is basically unused, but it's a toxic waste cleanup facility, and and I'm not sure what the city's position on that is, because that's a lot of developable land. And they were talking about how many acres you need, 22 acres or whatever, to make it valuable. I was thinking all that needs to be kind of, your white paper needs to be turned into a term paper, kind of thing.
Well,
So
and
that's just my thoughts on it.
And again, wonderful comments. To me, that might be like step 3 or 4. Right now, what I do is we as a committee have to say that, yeah, we're even willing to do this. And if we're willing to do this, the steps you're talking about before we go and we're going much further, yes, those things have to be incorporated in. Right now, if we decide we don't want to do it, none of that matters. If we say yes, this as a premise makes sense, then that'll get incorporated in as we go forward. Because right now, there's no particular place. This is saying potential areas, but as much as anything, is it something we as a committee say, yes, we want to start working to do?
Okay, no, I agree 100%. I mean, this is really the reason we're here. And as you say, we know Craney Island's going to happen. Fortunately, it's going to be far enough down the road that we can do something now. I'm just sitting here listening, and Ron, I agree with you. I'm sure things have already been done. And from the VPA side, I mean, I've seen conceptual drawings of what Craney Island looks like. I'd love to be able to actually see it maybe up on that wall. Here's Craney Island, here's Portsmouth, and this is what we have around it as far as city property, private property, government land. Just what does it look like?
And the results of all those surveys that somebody's paid for.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, if I may,
You may.
the survey work is very much preliminary in looking at alignment for road and rail, and so a lot of that's being coordinated through the TPO and the PDC as they're looking at their, the future elements of what the third crossing, because all of that eventually gets tied in together. So no decisions have been made. What's being done is trying to figure out what is the realm of the possible. What are the alignments that work when you look at the engineering limitations, when you look at the wetlands delineations, when you look at all this, where are the lines that, and then the geometric of what a rail line can do. Where are those limitations to try to figure that out? No decision has been made. At that point, there are conceptual drawings of what that looks like, and we're happy to share that, such as it is. But part of it is tying into not necessarily our effort, but the TPO and the PDC and their efforts, as well as looking at those alignments. And then the fuel depot, that's a real thing, because that is another limitation on those alignments, and giving them buffer space, because it's very much still active, and the Navy is actually looking at adding more activity there, and that affects how close you can get to that property.
Okay.
If I could, Chairman.
Sure.
Really what we have here is exactly, or this discussion that we're having is exactly the discussion we have tried to put forward via our strategic plan that we have come up with in economic development. Our strategic plan talks specifically about collaboration between public and private, public and public, but more specifically between the boards that exist, between the port and those facilities. We certainly see the maritime and logistics as one of our key, if not the key, target sector and target industry that we have. So in that vein, we have also looked at, after speaking with council at their retreat with the EDA a number of Saturdays ago, we are introducing a tiering system for city-owned property. So that what will happen is we will rate based on our criteria, basically a system of tiers 1, 2, and 3, 1 being the best, most ready and speed to market type of property. Tier 3 would be something that still works, but we need some work to be done. So that would focus on some of the things Mr. Peterman spoke about with regards to what are the limitations. The plan is to have that done within the next, we've been working on it for a while now, so probably the next 45, 60 days to have that list, a preliminary list completed and ranked. We are also working with our GIS department to have on our new website the actual map and designated parcels where someone, if they were looking to purchase, whether it be PPIC, whether it be a private investor, come in and look and see what properties we have available, what we see them as from a standpoint of tiering, and the value associated with each. Why that is important is because, again, certainly there may be some opportunities. We should be able to see the opportunities that become available from land banking. Should we own sites? And I'll give you an example. Our tiering system is pretty straightforward. A tier 1 site would be a site that's over 10 acres. Or a building that is at least 40,000 square feet. Okay, and we see that, and we use that barometer, if you will, because what we're seeing is buildings that are over 40,000 square feet, people aren't leasing them; they're buying them. So there have been at least 3 different buildings that have been available in the last 6 months, at least 40,000 square feet. They've all been purchased for $1 million and up. Okay. And I don't want to give away some of our numbers for next year, but at the end of the day, that's what we're seeing. Over 10 acres, not a lot of sites. Certainly, PPIC has a site that's right there. An example, though, would be BASF. I would consider BASF a tier 1 site. Yeah, it has some challenges because you got to have access and we got to work on some things. But for all intents and purposes, directly adjacent to VIG, I'm talking within 5 minutes, 43 acres, almost 44 acres of property, right off of 164. You have a lot of advantages to that. Okay, whereas a site, for example, that would be a tier 2 site would be a site that's 5 acres and over. And it would be about 10,000 square feet as far as a building is concerned. Okay? And that's probably where the majority of our properties here in Portsmouth, no matter who owns them. And then tier 3 would be anything 2 acres and over, and a building that's about 2,000 square feet. Again, that's more of your smaller flex space, things of that nature. Now, that doesn't mean that all sites, just because they meet those sizes, will be will fall in that criteria or be a tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. I'll give an example. The site, we have a site at 219 Pavilion, which is right here adjacent to Massimo Zanetti. That is a site that I would say would be a tier 2 site. It's about 4 acres, but based off location, based off access to the site, from a standpoint of visibility, that's a great site. However, the physical access to the property is a challenge because it's going to be tough to come off the interstate and make a right in into that piece of property because it's right there. You have to go down, go around, and come all the way around almost back to Bart Street again. But I say all that to say, all of this works in concert with what we've been trying to do and what we've been working to do. So we are excited that you all see the vision as well, and see the opportunity for us to collaborate. Certainly, we've had the conversation with the port, and they are on board from a standpoint of they want to collaborate. Some of the last two businesses that we've had come in were port related, you know. Port Rail Crane has added another 30 bodies to their number of people, and then at the same time, Kalmar has come in. They're a crane operator and crane supplier and servicer. They've come in and taken down 19,000 square feet. That's what we're seeing. Those auxiliary uses when it comes to the port. So again, we're excited, and I would agree wholeheartedly with your white paper that this is the start of what should be, I would think, the ongoing strategic plan for the PPIC.
All right, very good.
Hey, could I just have a follow? Could we ask Chris to maybe at our next meeting, present what he knows that's happened in the past?
Mm-hmm. If you want to take that.
Yeah, I'll take that back to him, and he'd be happy to do that, because that, like Robert said, that ties in very well with our efforts and how we're preparing and the need for some of this site-ready development.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, anything that we could get back from the VPA, and what I'm looking at, I think this is what everybody is thinking, is here's this huge piece of land at Craney Island. What is this going to look like 10 years from now? And then going around it, what do we have? What should we be zeroing in on? And I think, a picture's worth 1,000 words. If we can get a visual on all of this, maybe it'll help us to move forward with.
Yeah, I would agree with everything you just said, and I think it would be possible to give an action item to Mr. Moore to show us that picture that he just created of the Tier 1, 2, and 3 sites and what they look like, and kind of show us next month.
Certainly.
Because I look at it as collaboration. We're all working kind of hand in hand. There are things we may be able to do to help that help to create that kind of bank. But the key is when people are coming into this area looking to expand, that there are places in Portsmouth, so it's not like we're the wasteland and everything goes around it, because you start building that and more comps, it just helps to kind of perpetuate itself.
Chris, could you also let us know what the temperature is in Richmond on some of these projects? We all know that the crossings have been very problematic. They're funded and then they're not funded. It's very contentious. So if you could, especially like the third crossing you mentioned, we need to look at that and see how feasible that is in the next 10 years too.
Well, the other question is the third crossing a mandatory requirement for this to happen?
Right. I mean, it's all in there.
So I don't know that we're the right people to answer that question. I mean, we can bring what we have, but in order to be the authoritative source on what that is, I don't know that we're the right people to do that. Certainly, no, it's not. I mean, you need some access coming down the face of Craney Island connecting back into 164. Right. You don't necessarily need a tunnel. There are a lot of advantages to that I think not just us, but others in the region recognize. I will say that looking back on how the decision was made, it was a funding limitation source to do HRBT first. But the third crossing was not taken off the table, and the TPO put, I think, $7 million in to continue studying that as options look. So I don't think that it's all. I mean, I don't think we should take the fact that they funded HRBT first as third crossings off the table. But it's kind of prognostication going forward. That's a tough business to be.
Yeah, I know it's not determined by the port, but I know you guys are heavily involved in that, and I don't know how hard you guys are pushing for that. So we just need to know what TPO's thinking, what port's thinking, because all of those things will come into play.
Okay, good. Well, I think all this is excellent discussion, and I mean, moving forward, everybody's talking about, can we get a presentation on this next month? And and that comes right into our next topic here, in that we are not going to have a meeting next month. So, but I'm not saying we're going to push this down the road. I want to keep this alive, but maybe that'll give you a little bit more time to pull all this together. Well, why don't you?
Got another month.
Set that up the exact way.
Yeah. So, Rob, why don't you on the May meeting just give us your thoughts on it? And,
Certainly, we have the next meeting would be May the 22nd. And that's your regularly scheduled meeting. However, staff, I have a conflict in that I am set to travel with the port and the Hampton Roads Economic Development Alliance, HREDA, to Atlanta and Greenville to meet with some prospects. So I have asked the chairman if we could cancel the May meeting. That would allow us to prepare for your annual meeting in June. And at the same time, this now gives us some opportunity for myself, Chris, Andrew from the port to sit down, really talk about and map out and have some visuals for you all come June regarding some of the properties that we see just initially on the surface, and kind of vet a little bit and flesh out what we see this entire strategic plan, if you will, going forward.
all right, I hope everybody's in agreement. I just felt like it was more important for Rob to get out, get his feet wet and get some of the stuff moving here rather than sitting in here listening to us chew the fat. So, so with that being said, the intentions are that we will not have the meeting in May, use the next extra month to prepare for the annual meeting in June, and then we'll certainly move forward from there. If everybody's in agreement, then we'll just plan on that.
One question, Mr. Chairman. Nominating committee, there won't be a meeting before really your term. Is it okay to come in June in front of everybody, or do we need to do something before?
I think if you all come up with a slate of officers, I think you can just present it in June, and it can be voted on.
That's fine. I just want to make sure that we mentioned it.
As far as I mean,
Circulated by email as
it can be circulated by email.
Okay, just making sure what the protocol is.
I don't see a problem with that. I mean, if you came into the May meeting with a slate of new officers, I think we would say, okay, we have a slate of new officers. We'll vote on it the next month. I think with what we have going on here, should not be a problem. Unless anyone else sees it. Okay, good. Let's see here. Anything else from the VPA side?
I can give an update. Hopefully many of you, so Andrew Sinclair, for those who I have not met, standing in for Chris, who's traveling today. So happy to be here. It's been a while since I've been here on behalf of the port, so some of you, I think, are new commissioners since that time. Mm-hmm. John Reinhardt gave the State of the Port address a couple weeks ago. I hope many of you were able to attend that and get really a full picture of what's going on. But at a high level, March was our second best month ever for volumes. They were up 9% over the previous month, and so that has us at 4.4% growth for our fiscal year to date. So from July forward, so we're still tracking a very strong over 4% growth rate that we expect to continue through the end of the fiscal year. As we've been under construction, that continued growth rate has created some challenges that I'm sure, being in the industry, many of you are aware of. So we're being active in being able to respond to those. Right now, gates at VIG are open 21 hours a day. So they open at midnight and they close at 9 p.m. And that's the truck gates. Of course, we're still working ships during that time. We're still working rail during that time. But we're trying to be responsive. We did move a ship service out of VIG to try to relieve some of the volume pressure at that facility, and we did see some response in the turn times. The turn times that had been creeping up for the truck drivers had dropped beginning of this month, back down under an hour, approaching 40 minutes on average, weekly averages. So over the last 3 weeks, they've held underneath an hour. So we're comfortable with that while we continue to deliver the construction projects. So the construction at VIG is well underway, and we're starting to see progress there. So this month, we're turning on the first set of new semi-automated stacks. So that first new capacity will come online before the end of this month. And so that, and then about every 6 weeks, we'll get another set. So it's one more stack, another 5 lanes. About every 6 weeks will come online for about the next year and a half as we continue to deliver that project. That will help too, and then as that capacity comes online, we'll actually be able to take down some of the existing stacks and do some heavy maintenance in there without losing any capacity, because we won't do that until we've brought on more capacity. We're also updating the terminal operating system. So we went through this about a year and a half ago over at NIT, and now we're going to bring that same terminal operating system online again within the next few weeks at VIG. That'll give us a common operating system across all of our facilities. So that is a prerequisite to the truck reservation system that is being rolled out at NIT right now. And so once we get that common operating system, then we'll be able to start doing that, rolling that out at VIG this summer as well. So that'll, just like it was at NIT, we started at 2 hours in the morning. We're going to not do it. It won't be all day. And we're working with the motor carrier community to really identify how to roll that out. Again, when you're doing a 21-hour workday, it's not as easy as saying it's going to be 5 a.m. to 7 a.m. So we don't have all of those answers yet, but we're working with the motor carrier community to identify that, but bring that reservation system over to help manage the capacity and the flow and be able to deliver the service there as well. The rail service, the new rail service at VIG, the first set of the rail bundles will come online in June as well. So we're really excited about that and our ability to grow the rail capacity at that facility, and then continue to build out. So then that project will run through about a year from now, 2019. Spring 2019, the VIG project should be completely done. So we're, like I said, very excited with the work that's going on. I'm happy to answer any questions.
No, that all sounds great. Any questions?
Is the dredging that's going on at PMT, is that just maintenance dredging, or are they trying to increase capacity?
It is all maintenance dredging, taking it back down to permitted depth. Some of it's, I would say, deferred maintenance, but it is all maintenance dredging. There is one section, we have a term that we call a knuckle, that where just kind of in that approach channel that needs to be evened out to allow some of the ships that are larger than have been given them easier access in.
So you are going to try to bring in slightly larger ships than what?
Slightly larger ships than have been historically calling there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Still won't be the ultra-large container vessels that you're seeing at VIG right now. I think there was, I don't know if it sailed this morning, it was there yesterday. Mm-hmm. That size vessel won't be calling there, but slightly larger than what has historically been called PMT.
No. Cool. They're old cranes. So. All right, very nice. Thank you for the update. Always good to hear from the Port Authority as to what's going on out there, so we certainly appreciate it. Okay, moving forward, I do think we have one item for closed session. Is that correct? Is there any other business before we go into closed session that anybody would like to bring up? If not, then I'll turn it back to Mr. Moore for
Let me read the motion, sure.
for the motion.
Whereas the Virginia Freedom of Information Act provides that the Board of Commissioners may hold closed meetings for certain purposes set forth in paragraph 2.23711A of the Code of Virginia in 1950 as amended, and whereas in compliance with the requirements of the Code, the topics to be discussed are set forth below, and the subparagraphs of paragraph 2.23711A authorizing discussion of the topics in closed session are set forth in parentheses after each topic. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Commissioners shall meet in closed meeting for the purpose of discussion or consideration of the investment of public funds where competition or bargaining is involved, where, if made public initially, the financial interest of the governmental unit would be adversely affected. Parens, office space 6.
Okay, so that's a motion, is that right? Or,
Yeah, if somebody can make the motion as stated in second.
okay. Roll call?
All right, Mr. Barron,
Yes.
Bento,
Yes?
Mr. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Peterman,
Yes.
Mr. Toops.
Yes.
In closed session.
Okay, we're in closed session.
Was convened, were heard, discussed, or considered in the closed meeting by the Commissioners.
Okay, and a motion on that?
So moved.
Okay, Mr. Bento?
All right, Mr. Bear,
Yes.
Mr. Bento,
Yes?
Mr. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Peterman,
Yes.
Mr. Toots.
Yes.
We're in open session.
Okay, very well. All right, is there any further business to be brought up? Anybody have any comments last minute? If not, then I will go ahead and say we're adjourned. Thank you very much, and we will look forward to seeing you in June. If anybody has anything in the meantime, we're certainly available by email, phone, whatever.
And we will send out a reminder that the May meeting has been canceled, so we'll send it out. As we would normally send out our agendas, we'll send out that reminder.
Okay. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
I'm always looking for long poles.
Yeah, absolutely.